admirers in the lurch, and ran off with fortunate Mr. White. So far as this goes, there is nothing to show why the murder was committed. Men do not perpetrate crimes for the sake of the light of loves like Musette, unless, indeed, some wretched youth embezzles money to buy jewellery for his divinity. The career of Musette in London was simply that of a clever member of the demi-monde, and, as far as I can learn, no one was so much in love with her as to commit a crime for her sake. So far, so good. The motive of the crime must be found in Australia. White had spent nearly all his money in England, and consequently Musette and her lover arrived in Sydney with comparatively very little cash. However, with an Epicurean-like philosophy, they enjoyed themselves on what little they had, and then came to Melbourne, where they stayed at a second-rate hotel. Musette, I may tell you, had one special vice, a common one, drink. She loved champagne, and drank a good deal of it. Consequently, on arriving at Melbourne, and not finding that a new generation had arisen which knew not Joseph, I mean Musette, she drowned her sorrows in the flowing bowl, and went out, after a quarrel with Mr. White, to view Melbourne by night. A familiar scene to her, no doubt. What took her to Little Bourke Street I don't know. Perhaps she got lost, perhaps it had been a favourite walk of hers in the old days. At all events, she was found dead drunk in that unsavoury locality by Sal Rawlins. I know this is so, because Sal told me so herself. Sal acted the part of the Good Samaritan, took her to the squalid den she called home, and there Rosanna Moore fell dangerously ill. White, who had missed her, found out where she was, and that she was too ill to be removed. I presume he was rather glad to get rid of such an encumbrance, so he went back to his lodgings at St. Kilda, which, judging from the landlady's story, he must have occupied for some time, while Rosanna Moore was drinking herself to death in a quiet hotel. Still, he does not break off his connection with the dying woman, but one night is murdered in a hansom cab, and that same night Rosanna Moore dies. So, from all appearances, everything is ended. Not so, for before dying Rosanna sends for Brian Fitzgerald at his club, and reveals to him a secret which he locks up in his own heart. The writer of this letter has a theory, a fanciful one if you will, that the secret told to Brian Fitzgerald contains the mystery of Oliver White's death. Now then, have I not found out a good deal without you, and do you still decline to reveal the rest? I do not say you know who killed White, but I do say you know sufficient to lead to the detection of the murderer. If you tell me, so much the better, both for your own sense of justice and for your peace of mind. If you do not, well, I shall find out without you. I have taken, and still take, a great interest in this strange case, and I have sworn to bring the murderer to justice, so I make this last appeal to you to tell me what you know. If you refuse, I will set to work to find out all about Rosanna Moore prior to her departure from Australia in 1858, and I am certain sooner or later to discover the secret which led to White's murder. If there is any strong reason why it should be kept silent, I perhaps will come round to your view, and let the matter drop. But if I have to find it out myself, the murderer of Oliver White need expect no mercy at my hands. So think over what I have said. If I do not hear from you within the next week, I shall regard your decision as final, and pursue the search myself. I am sure, my dear Fitzgerald, you will find this letter too long, in spite of the interesting story it contains, so I will have pity on you and draw to a close. Remember me to Miss Frettlby and to her father. With kind regards to yourself, I remain, yours very truly, Duncan Calton. When Fitzgerald had finished the last of the closely written sheets, he let the letter fall from his hands, and leaning back in his chair, stared blankly into the dawning light outside. He arose after a few moments, and pouring himself out a glass of brandy, drank it quickly. Then, mechanically lighting a cigar, he stepped out of the door into the fresh beauty of the dawn. There was a soft crimson glow in the east, which announced the approach of the sun, and he could hear the chirping of the awakening birds in the trees. But Brian did not see the marvellous breaking of the dawn. He stood staring at the red light flaring in the east, and thinking of Calton's letter. "I can do no more," he said bitterly, leaning his head against the wall of the house. "There is only one way of stopping Calton, and that is by telling him all. My poor Madge, my poor Madge." A soft wind arose and rustled among the trees, and there appeared great shafts of crimson light in the east. Then, with a sudden blaze, the sun peered over the brim of the wide plain. The warm yellow rays touched lightly the comely head of the weary man, and turning round, he held up his arms to the great luminary, as though he were a fire worshipper. "I accept the omen of the dawn," he cried, "for her life and for mine." Chapter 24. Read by Sibella Denton. For more free audiobooks or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org.